Welcome to Artists at Work, Diablo 4.
Good morning, BlizzCon. How you guys doing? Awesome. We are so excited to be here. My name is Dan Briggs. I am the lead visual effects artist on Diablo 4. Thank you. It's really weird to be able to say that. We've never been allowed to say Diablo 4 out loud, so we're still getting used to it. We have several artists from the team here today, and we're going to kind of walk you guys through what it takes to create content for the game. So let's start with some introductions. Rob.
Hey everyone, I'm Rob Sevilla. I'm a senior concept artist too at Blizzard Entertainment. I've been at Blizzard for 14 years, almost 15. And today I'm going to be showing the process of how we, create a concept from thumbnails to a final image.
Awesome, thanks, Rob. Hyro, tell the audience what you do.
Hi, my name is Hyro Sanchez. I'm a senior character artist in the Diablo 4 team. And I've been at Blizzard almost 6 years, 5 years and 9 months. And today I'm going to show you guys the process that I go through creating a creature, a character. I'll just show a few things like Substance Painter, ZBrush, and a little bit of Marmoset to learn how to showcase your work. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. All right, and last but not least, we have Corey.
Hi guys, my name is Corey Piegler. I am a senior character animator on Diablo 4. I've been working in the game industry for about 12 years now. Been at Blizzard since 2011. And today I'm going to be showing you guys the process for creating Boulder, which is a skill for the Druid class.
Yeah. Has anyone played the demo? Awesome. All right, let's pull up everyone's screens real quick. All right, we're going to start with Corey since I'm standing over here. Corey, can you show us the final result?
Sure, yeah.
Where we're going to end up today?
Just to give you guys some context, this is the finished skill as it stands in the game today. And I'm going to show you how we begin the process, and I'll show you guys the video again at the end so you can kind of see the whole thing.
Awesome. Hyro.
Hi. So today I'm going to show you the treasure goblin. I just thought it was very iconic just to see him in Diablo 4. So yeah, this is pretty much it.
Awesome. And Rob?
Hey Dan.
You have some messed up stuff on your screen.
Well, so you can't go wrong with adding more demons in Diablo. So it's just kind of an idea that the concept team might want to pitch for something, a creature you might fight later.
Awesome. So it does take a lot longer than 45 minutes to create content for the game. So you might see the artist kind of jump ahead through different files. It's really to kind of just show you, from start to finish. So think of it sort of as like a time-lapse montage version of how we might create assets. Okay, so we're going to be taking Q&A throughout the demo, and we actually have two microphones in the aisle. So we have Jolene and Rex over here. They're both also Blizzard Entertainment employees. So if you have any questions, just line up behind them, and we're going to get started. But a couple times throughout, we'll start taking questions. So let's begin. All right, Rob.
Yes, sir.
You look like you're drawing some thumbnails.
That's right. So usually, when we have an idea, it'll go through a brainstorming stage where we would try to, come up with like different ideas, things that might work, things that might not work. But after that stage, when we have a clear idea of what we want, we'll go into the thumbnail stage. And at this stage, we're trying to figure out like posing, trying to do experimentations because thumbnails are really fast to do. And so at this stage, you're allowed to draw messy and, it's more of just exploration at this point.
Sweet. So when you're starting a new concept, a new idea, how often is it the idea comes from you or the idea comes from a designer? What is that workflow?
So in our team is actually really awesome because they really promote collaboration. So ideas can come from, anybody. We've had ideas come from, concept ideas come from designers. We've had like game design ideas come from artists. So I think that's what's awesome about it in terms of it can come from any person in the team. and everyone can kind of jam on it.
Awesome. So if you had to give advice to an artist, maybe starting out, what at this stage in the process, what are the important things to keep in mind?
Here would be silhouette. So it's important that when you're designing, so I'm constantly thinking about, because our game is played from an isometric point of view, it's important that the shape reads from a small size. And so silhouette at this stage is pretty crucial.
Awesome. It's looking great. Okay, let's jump over to Hyro.
Hi.
Hyro made the treasure goblin, which is in the demo. Has anyone killed the treasure goblin yet? There, we got a few people. That's cool. Okay, Hyro. So you're in this program where you're sculpting. Can you just tell people what is the software that you're using?
So ZBrush, it's a 3D sculpting software. Basically, is for those of you that sculpt traditionally, it's basically that but digitally, and it helps us do like a very high resolution model with a lot of detail, basically.
Awesome. So it seems like you're already pretty far along. What are you going to show us today in this program?
Yes. So yeah, this is the final model. It's 3D sculpt, and what I'm going to show you right now is I'm going to start sculpting some detail on the belts. So basically in Diablo 4 or in the Diablo world, we never have anything clean and nice. So it needs to look worn out, beat up, just like this. So I start by the edges, just, this belt has been used for a long time. He's been running from the barbarian or something. And then I do a couple of scratches, and it make it look more Diablo. Also, like, it's always good to keep in mind, it's not only a sculpting detail, it's a sculpting detail with a reason. So, for example, here, just to show you really quick, it's telling a story with your sculpt. So, for me, I added these marks like he was whipped or something like that. I just thought it was cool. It's kind of Diablo and creepy, and it just made sense to me. So yeah, that was like an intention. Hey, if the player looks at that detail, what is he gonna think? Oh man, this guy has been through some stuff, So basically, yeah, just sculpting with a lot of reason, it will help your designs.
How long would it take you, do you think, to get from starting it, with nothing, from a concept to this point?
From concept to this point, so I start with a base mesh, or I make my own in Maya, which is another 3D program for modeling. And then I subdivide it, and then I bring kind of a block out to ZBrush. And in ZBrush, and that could take a few days, like 2-3 days. And then in ZBrush, it could take from 3 days to 5 days, depends on what it is. Like if it's a huge monster, it's gonna have more detail and more pieces. The more pieces there are, the more time consuming it is, because you need to spend a lot of time in each piece.
Awesome. Okay, let's jump over to Corey. Corey, you're working on a skill. You're making Boulder.
Yes.
Can you just tell people kind of where you would start off in this process?
So in the very beginning, I probably will sit down with some of the other disciplines like design, programming, engineering, VFX, and we kind of figure out what the skill needs to accomplish in game. And then once we have like a rough idea, then I'll start on very basic stuff from an animation standpoint. So like as you can see here in my timeline, which is where these little red ticks are, I only have a few of them. I have like 3 main poses I'm working with, which is like the anticipation pose here, where you can see him like kind of winding up, and then this pose here where he thrusts the boulder out forward. So mainly in the beginning stages, I just want to make sure that this stuff, that these poses are strong and that they read specifically from what we call game cam, which is the isometric camera for the game. So even though I'm coming in and I'm like getting in really close to kind of fine tune all these little rotations, I'm constantly checking from what's more of like the proper distance that you'll see in game. And I'm just trying to get these poses to read really strong, and then I'll continually build off of them as I flesh the animation out.
Awesome. So you mentioned the timeline. For people who may not be familiar with that, can you just explain like the basics of this and kind of how it works?
Correct. So in Maya, in our game engine, like 30 frames equals 1 second. So you can see in my timeline, it starts here at 0. This is 30, and then I have 60 out here. So this whole animation in this blockout state takes like 2 seconds. And so I'll use that to kind of time, like, how fast does the skill need to be? The designers will give me maybe a rough estimate of what they want, and then I'll use that as a starting off point, but we can like adjust this as need be. Like I can slide this to make it whatever length I need.
So what's the benefit to working in stepped animation? Why not just make it smooth from the beginning?
So the benefit for me in working with stepped animation is a process by which, like you see if I slide my cursor here from 0 all the way to frame like 10, 12, nothing changes. It's as if the drawing or the pose is static the whole time. And what it means is I'm not dealing with Maya like making in between frames for me. And so I can control exactly like when things change. And basically this process working this way allows me to get a kind of a blocked out animation into the engine early. I can hand that off to designers and they can start iterating. So they're not basically waiting on me to have like a completely fully polished animation for them to start testing stuff in game.
Awesome. All right, let's take a question. We have a guy over here.
So, because this is the 4th iteration of Diablo, I'm wondering how you carry forward tradition in the art, but still have new things pop out in your work.
Sure. Rob, you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So we, the concept team and the actually Diablo team has pillars that we go by, and one of them is Return to Darkness. And so, like, part of that in terms of Return to Darkness is making sure that we, embrace the legacy of like what Diablo 2 was. And so for us, it's important that we do touch upon like familiar ideas and familiar shapes, but we can kind of add our own kind of like updated interpretation to it.
Awesome. Hyro and Corey, do you guys have anything to add? What does Return to Darkness mean to you?
So Return to Darkness for me is, people were asking for Diablo 2 for a long time. And even though Diablo 3 was awesome, we wanted to make sure this time we will do it even darker. So I have a little image to explain what I mean. So here you go. This is the treasure gobbling of different games that we have. We have here the treasure gobbling of D3, Heroes of the Storm, World of Warcraft, more Diablo 3, and then Diablo 4. So as you can see, any of these designs, you can tell what it is. It's a treasure gobbling, right? But it has different styles, but we always respect the main design because that's like what makes it the treasure gobbling.
Awesome. Let's jump to the next question. We have someone over here.
For the concept art, do you usually work off of mood boards and the design docs when you're doing the thumbnail sketches?
Yes, that's actually something that, like I mentioned earlier when we were doing the brainstorm, we usually do a ton of research and kind of preparation work where we grab reference. So that's really important to have.
You have a question over here?
Hey there. So when you're designing animation or a skill, in this case, what's your thought process that you go through in order to keep that animation unique in comparison to other skills or other animations that might already be in the game or that you've already designed?
So for Boulder specifically, this is a returning skill from D2. So we wanted to kind of keep the essence of what makes it Boulder, but kind of reimagine it for the new game for Diablo 4. We have a newly designed druid, and we want to kind of make that all fit together. There's a couple different knobs we can turn as far as like separating out how one skill looks versus another. Some of it might even be, for example, like the arc of a sword swing or something. Like maybe for one skill it's more vertical and down, and for another skill you might make it more like horizontally, laterally. Not something I have specifically here for the druid in this case, but there's a bunch of different things we do in terms of like which poses are we hitting to sell the skill. So this pose right here, like you'll see this for Boulder and it tells you immediately that that's that skill. Like we probably wouldn't use a similar pose for something different. So yeah, that's kind of how we would try to lock it down, like in terms of making it clear.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to jump back to Rob. So, Rob,
Yes, sir.
you moved on from your thumbnail, it looks like. You're
Yes.
kind of in the second phase here. You picked a thumbnail. Where do you go from here?
Okay, so usually after we have a thumbnail that I like, and I do like a cleaner line work on top, and it's very, very loose because I'm going to paint over it anyway. So now I'm just basically blocking in basic colors. So just super flat, swatches of color, just so I know what my color scheme will be.
Awesome, it's looking great. So, how often, in this stage, are you iterating and changing the idea? Like, are you pretty locked into your line drawing, or, how often does this change?
There's definitely room for iteration, and that's something that we definitely do a lot in the concept team. We're constantly iterating, and sometimes it's one of those where even once it gets through to modeling, we'll get some feedback with the character artists like Hyro, and they would say hey, this needs to be clear, and so we'll go back and in the concept stage and maybe add a side drawing of kind of clarifying a certain shape or whatever it is that needs clarification. But there's definitely a lot of going back and forth. So I would never consider concept to be a final stage. It's just to share. It's literally just to take an idea and that was kind of abstract to begin with, and you're making it into a visual idea.
Awesome. So it looks like you're focusing on color primarily right now. Are there
Yes.
other things you're considering as you're going through this stage?
So I think it's important to notice too that it's not just a color decision, but I'm making sure that I have my lights and darks established as well. So let me fill this in real quick. So when you see this character, the play of light and dark, like his dark helmet, light fleshy colored, pale skin, should create a nice contrast with each other, and they should make it easily readable from game cam.
So yeah, you'll hear us mention this a lot. We talk about game cam. We really want things to be readable. So I think it actually is very meaningful for pretty much every art discipline. Okay, let's jump over to Hyro again. Hyro, what have you been up to since I last talked to you?
Well, basically, I can show you. So let's say I started with this, very clean, the one that we said no for Diablo. And now, as you can see, I added some details. So now it kind of relate to the other builds, like this one, for example. It's okay, this one is worn up as well. So now I just made it more Diablo. One thing to keep in mind at Blizzard, we look at good reference, real reference, art reference, but even if the game looks more realistic, it's important to know that we like to have our Blizzard style. The little Blizzard touch, the last 10% that makes it Blizzard, that's a very, very important for us. And it applies for concept art, animation, everything.
So where you're at right now, this model looks super detailed. Is this the same mesh that goes into the game?
So it's actually not game engines where you build a game. Basically, they can't render so much polys. We are always on a budget. So I can show you right here. This, it's basically the low poly, which as you can see, it doesn't have a lot of detail. This is the high poly. So what we do is we transfer all this crisp detail into this mesh. And this is the mesh that goes into the game. So basically the game engine says, oh, this is a pretty low poly character, low budget is good, so I'm going to run the game very good. But then the player, what he's going to see, what you guys are going to see is basically this. So it's like we're trying to fake it in a way, and that's how if it works, it means you did your job very well. Sometimes it's difficult because you don't want to compromise any detail, but there's always a little compromise because always game goes first.
Awesome. Okay, so let's say your sculpt is done, you're happy with all the detail, it looks good. Where do you go? How do you take it from that to that? Can you explain that?
Yes. So I export the meshes from ZBrush, and then in ZBrush, we have to make color-coded, which will be this one on the center. Why color-coded? Because we use Substance Painter and Substance Designer, and this helped me to make masks based on the color so I can work non-destructive. It's very important to work non-destructive. So let me just show you right here, Substance. So this is Substance Painter with texture here. I import the models here, the high poly and the low poly, and then we call it baking. Not like baking a cake, but basically creating the textures. That's our way of saying, that's why we say baking. So this is the low poly, and as you can see, it looks almost like the one in ZBrush, but this is actually what we put into the game. And
so yeah, this is the low poly mesh. It looks like it has all the detail because Hyro baked his textures onto this thing. Can you show us the flattened view of your model?
Oh, sure.
So this is a texture. Can you explain, like, how does this work? What is this? What are we looking at here?
So basically, these are the UVs. Basically, think about it as I have a 3D model, but I need to unwrap it in a way. So I unwrap the face, as you can see right here, and the chest, the skirt, the arms, and this is the way like we set it up before going into the game. So the game, when we make the textures, everything is gonna be in the same place, and it's easier to paint for us to do it like this way. And then you can jump back and forth between 3D and 2D in a way.
Right, so yeah, this texture is faking all that detail from his sculpt. Hi, we're gonna come back to you. Corey, what have you been up to?
Yeah, so at this stage in the animation, I've already locked down kind of my golden poses, and I'm going in and adding what are either called breakdowns or sometimes referred to as in-betweens. You can see there's more tick marks where I've set poses here to get me from, in-betweens to get me from one pose to the next. So honestly, at this stage, like, this is probably early enough to where I could hand this off to a designer and we could actually check it in-game, and it'll live like this for a while, so that they can test things, and I'll just continue to iterate on the animation on my own time.
Awesome. So we all work together very often. Corey mentioned he works with design quite a bit. Corey, can you tell the audience about what we call feature teams?
Yeah, so feature team is where we get kind of at least one of each of the major stakeholders from different departments. So like you would have myself, an animator, someone from VFX, maybe Dan, and an engineer to help out with every aspect of what we do individually. And we kind of all just work together to bring whatever the feature is to life. Yeah.
Awesome. So you went from stepped animation to, I guess this is still stepped animation. But it seems like you've added a lot of frames. Like, what level of polish are you at this point?
I'd say at this point the animation's probably like 30% done. And yeah, like I said, the advantage there is just that you can get it into the game early, so that like people aren't necessarily, you're not bottlenecking design on making certain choices. And then I can continue from like 30 to 100% with the animation over like the course of a few days or so.
Awesome. And then you mentioned game cam earlier. Can you like zoom out and kind of explain what types of things you're thinking about when you're looking at your artwork from game cam?
Yeah, so one of the things we're thinking about with game camera, obviously Diablo 4 is an isometric game, kind of along the lines of what Rob mentioned. Silhouette has to read very strongly from isometric camera, so I'm constantly checking from up here because, like, let's say I'm down here, like directly in front of the druid, with this arm that's casting boulder. It's kind of lost here, you know, like it's inside of the silhouette of his body. So I want to make sure that it reads much clearer out here. Like you can see, I have the staff kind of back here. I've got this arm thrusting out forward, and I want all that motion, the back to forth here, to be very clear. And obviously there's going to be a giant boulder that comes out in front of him too. So all of those things combined kind of just help to give you a solid understanding of exactly what's happening on screen.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to take a couple more questions. Looks like Farah over here has a question. Is that Anna or Farah? I can't tell from here. Yes.
So my question was about the creative process, and if you're brainstorming or looking for inspiration, is there anything unconventional that you usually use as a go-to to kind of get that inspiration?
Yeah, so on our team, we often do brainstorms with the entire team. Corey, do you think you could tell the audience a little bit about like how that process works?
So one idea is like we might just gather a bunch of people in a room and we'll have like post-it notes, and you're free to write down like whatever cool idea comes to mind. Like if we're designing a new skill for the druid or something, it's kind of like we'll just say, what do you think would be really cool to see the druid do in game? And everyone will kind of collect those, they'll all write down their ideas and we'll collect them at the end and kind of read them out. So we get a lot of ideas that come out of that, because some of them are like almost, they're kind of funny, like they might be intended to be a joke, but then you could find something in there that actually is like, oh, maybe that is kind of cool, like let's see if that could lead somewhere. So having that very open-ended process in the beginning just allows us to kind of explore as much as possible, so we don't like paint ourselves into a corner too soon. We want to see how many ideas we can get.
Yes, we generate thousands.
In the beginning. Yeah,
it's really crazy. We just have stacks of post-it notes. Let's take a question over here.
Yeah, I love the pillar concept, and one of them was darkness. What are some of the other, or what are all of the others that you keep?
Sure. Rob, do you want to talk about art pillars?
One of them, well, the concept team has a different set of pillars. And same with the design team has also a different set of pillars. But for the concept team, one of them is push boundaries. And so, I don't know who asked the question. Oh, okay. One of them was push boundaries. And so it's really important that we're constantly trying to push in terms of what we think is dark. And sometimes it gets too far and we get feedback, and they tell us, hey, that's a little inappropriate. But it's good. I mean, that's what this stage is for, like it's all about exploring ideas and, what Corey said, there's no right or wrong idea, it's just keep going and try ones that work. And if it's too much, you can always rein it back in.
Great question. Thank you. All right, let's take one over here. Wow, we have a lot of questions all of a sudden.
Yeah, a question for Corey. I see you selecting the controllers with the visibility off. Are they all on hotkeys?
I actually have a picker, a UI on the left side on the screen that you can't see, but I can show you the locators here. So I'm actually I can actually show you the picker. Like this is what I use to select, and you can see like it all lines up with everything here. So I can hand select them in the viewer as well. But sometimes it gets to be a little bit like, they're like kind of overlapped and on top of each other. So I have everything set up to where I can just grab each control individually and manipulate them as need be. It's just a speed thing, yeah. But sorry, I didn't even realize I didn't have the locators viewable for most of the time.
Thanks for your question. All right, let's jump back over here.
Okay, so I was wondering, what's the deliberation process in the color scheme? Because each sort of section has a similar color scheme. So do you reference specific characters, or is it just a basic color scheme that you go through with the process?
Sure. Rob, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, actually, the color schemes is kind of like decided by the art director, the concept lead, and also the concept team, and a lot of the designers as well. But we do establish color schemes. So, for example, like one of the zones, I don't think I'm allowed to say, but one of the zones might be, hey, it's going to be snowy, so we might use cold colors or cool colors like blues and, other colors that might feel like wet wood, right? Like how would color that be, like this dark brown? And another one might be, oh, we're doing a desert. Like what does, like a dry material, and what are the colors that exist in that?
Yeah, I think we want the world to feel believable, so we make monster families that fit in the zones, and we kind of think about it as a whole and then build it out from there.
Yeah, I can actually show you really quick talking about that. Let me just jump in. So talking about, monster families, for example. So this is a few creatures, as you can see. So basically, the main goal is, to make it look different, depends on the area. But, this one is the treasure goaling, and these are his colors. But then if we look into the Fallens, this is the Fallen Lunatics, he explodes. It's completely different. So now you know that the Fallens are always red. And then the skeletons, for example. Skeletons here, the skeleton family, they're not gonna be, I don't know, pink or green. Like, they look like this. Their bones they're very recognizable from game view. Same with this guy. Same with this guy. So, and then it's all about the game camera. So, if you go here, and I put it right like here, you need to, you can tell he is the treasure goblin from the silhouette just because the material breakup is like really obvious. So that's one more thing to add up there that is very, very important. Like, you need to be able to recognize any creature from, because they're very, very small on the screen, right? So that's a good thing to, like, that's one thing that we actually like to emphasize a lot. We think about it all the time.
Thank you for the question. All right, let's take another one over here.
Yeah, so this is a question about the moving from a high poly count to a low poly count. Are you picking certain regions of the character to keep higher fidelity so it looks good from far away, like detail in the face, then trading that off versus shoe texture or something?
Yeah, there's always a little sacrifice, as I said before. The most important thing is, what do you see most on this character? So basically the top part, right? So that will be you will add maybe a little bit more resolution on the face, because if he ever has a close-up, then you will notice, right? And then there will be different type of characters. One like this only has one texture, but another type of character could have 2 or 3 textures. It depends on what it is. Depends what the character is gonna be doing in the game, how it's gonna be shown, and then that's decided later. Yeah. Is that okay? Good.
Awesome. Let's take one more over here.
Okay, it's a question for ZBrush. I saw you sculpted some very fine details.
Yes.
But in games, the character is very small. So when do you know you should stop because those details won't show anyway?
So the good thing, so let me see. Not right now, I like to do a lot of big shapes and medium detail in ZBrush, and Substance generates a lot of that high frequency detail that I'm gonna use, and it's very indestructible because let's say my art director, when the character is done, he wants to make some changes to the sculpt. If I have to do that, I'm gonna have to redo a lot of stuff, a lot of the pores, a lot of the scars. But if I keep it on Substance and I only keep ZBrush with the middle shapes and the basic shapes, then I can just switch it on the go. So I use Substance for that, and I test it in the game. If it looks good and it works out, I'll add, and I need more detail, then I'll add more detail. If it's too noisy and I can't read it from game camera, then I can easily just tone it back. But it's always to think about very simple at the beginning, and then just do that high frequency detail on a program like Substance.
It really comes down to game cam. We also have cutscenes in our game, so there are moments where the camera will pull in, and sometimes you see some of these characters a little closer. So game cam's the focus, but there are moments where you see the detail. Okay, we're gonna move to the next phase. Thank you for your question. All right, so Rob jumped ahead. This is looking more real. Rob, this thing looks a lot more three-dimensional than before. How did you go from flat colors to this guy?
So usually once you have, let me turn off this layer. So I have this, which was my block-in. I start to add shadows on top. And what I mean by that is I start to think in terms of basic forms. So I start to light these objects for example, the deltoid here. I start to think of it as a sphere, and if the light was coming this way and it was hitting it, you would get a light side and a dark side, right? So it would be, this side would be dark, and this side would be light. But basically, I start treating this whole character concept just like that. I start to think about where the light's coming from, and this leg might be a cylinder, this torso might be a bean shape, and I just start lighting them in the same lighting direction.
Do you think it's worthwhile for artists to practice just on basic shapes like spheres and cylinders and things like that?
I would say it's very crucial, actually. When you're first learning to when you're first starting out, I think it's very important to just render, like learning how to render simple shapes, because those fundamentals will definitely apply to more advanced shapes later.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. So we have about 11 minutes left. We're gonna go through the final stages, and that way we can get a few more questions in. Hyro, you are in Painter still.
Yes.
Can you show us, like, it seems like he's pretty much just flat colors at this point. Oh, you started to paint a little bit. Can you kind of explain the process of going from, sort of like Rob, flat colors to a more detailed
Right.
character?
So remember those masks that we did before? So this is why I use them. So I make different folders for each color, and then I call it, and I know this one is the folder for cloth, this one is the folder for skin. So I can just drag and drop materials or paint within that mask, and that allows me to work more comfortable and make edits really fast. So I always start really, really flat because I want to get that read that we talked about. So I can just do, for example, as you can see, I can just turn on and off like layers and materials. And like, let's say the art director wants the skin to be orange. So that's pretty good, right? It's weird, but what the art director says, that goes. So let's say if I'm gonna make this green, see how fast it is? Like, he could be the little Hulk here for the Diablo. But it's really, really quick. Just keep it in folders, keep it organized. If they say I need the skin to be this color, you change it. It's just making your life easier. Yeah.
Awesome. So you're choosing color pickers, which is still like really flat.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go from that to a little bit more detail? Like, you start painting, it seems like.
Yeah, you can just you can approach it different ways. You can just start painting normally, like you will do in Photoshop, or you can drag and drop materials. Let me see if I have one here. So, for example, I have rotten skin. So if I drag and drop it, just 1 second. So it applied it to the entire thing, but let's see.
Okay, well, Tyro's setting up his mask. I'm going to jump over to Corey.
Yes.
All right, Corey, you're smoothing out this animation. What have you done since we last chatted?
So at this point, I'm adding in a lot more individual keyframes for the faster motions, just to make those clearer and lock them down. I'm probably, at this point, I would say the animation's 80% there, 85%, and everything's still in step. At this point, I would probably start actually going into the graph editor and smoothing things out. And I have a final version of that file I'll show you as well. But yeah, at this stage, I'm adding in overlap, trying to get some more settle into the end of the animation. We'll get into stuff like facial expressions, which aren't really a big thing in our game because you're never really up this close. But that being said, even though you're out here, you'll still catch a little bit of it. So we try to put it in there just to get a little bit more character. But that's kind of more of a polish phase thing, which is kind of the point that I'll be moving into at this point in the animation.
Awesome. So I know you use the graph editor in your workflow. Can you bring that up and show people what that is?
Sure. It is a giant. Let me see. Windows, editor, graph editor. I think I can bring it up. Or maybe it's hanging.
I think I made Corey's Maya just crash. I apologize.
No.
It works.
We got something. I'll just grab one control.
Save often, artists. You don't want to lose your work. Yes. Don't trust your software.
Yeah, so all these different colored lines correspond to various they correspond to various axes of movement. So you can see I have and I'll adjust this in a minute, but I have the druid's his waist control selected, and if I move it in this graph editor, you can see it corresponds to him moving up and down. So when we're going in and really trying to polish this stuff out, I'll just set it to spline so you can see this curve here. We want to smooth out things like this, where you'll see that the curve is there's a little kink in it. So I might move this down and just grab this bar here and smooth it out, just so you get you can see there like a bit more of a smoother movement in what his whole body's doing. So at this stage, I'm starting to move into that element of the animation to try to get it ready to basically be in the game engine, playing back at full speed.
Awesome. Let's take some questions.
In fact, I'll move on to this
So there is droid in Diablo, and there are also droids in Warcraft and in World of Warcraft franchise. We all know they are different, but what are the core features and differences that define Diablo droids? What makes droids in Diablo special?
Sure. I have a good answer. Who wants to take that one, though? Anyone?
I can start out with it and maybe
go ahead.
kind of take it over. So for Diablo, our druid is, we want it to be a little bit darker in tone. It's obviously going to be a bit different than like the WoW druid, for instance. So I think thematically we just want to, at least as far as I know, kind of hold on to some of the themes from the Diablo 2 druid, but to bring those up to date for 2019 with our game. And maybe you can lead into some more thoughts on that.
Yeah, so for me, it's shape-shifting. You know, a lot of games, when you shape-shift, you just like pop to a new model. And in our game, it's like a smooth transition. You could be wearing any armor, and it kind of just works. And it's a little gruesome and awesome. And then for me, it's also like earth and storm magic, and then just being able to turn into amazing forms and kind of wreck the battlefield. Great question. Thank you. Let's take one over here.
Yeah, earlier you were talking about lighting angles, and I was just wondering, are we going to get ray tracing with this?
Hyro, do you want to tell them a little bit about PBR?
Sure. So the new technology we're using these days is called PBR, physically based lighting. Really easy to explain it is basically, imagine that it just works like real lighting. So we have like the sun basically in the engine, and then you have to play with different values and textures to be able to make it look correct. But it's like before you had just color map and a specular map or normal map. Now you have like roughness, metallic, which means is this material metallic or not metallic? And the roughness could make it brighter or not brighter. So you have to like play with all these values just because it's this like more accurate technology to make it look like the real world. But once you do that, it's important to go back to that last 10% I told you about, the Blizzard way, basically, and make it look more Blizzard. And then talking about lighting, I can show you this, which is what I was going to show next, is just when you showcase your character, this wouldn't be in the engine, this will be like for you. For example, if you want to do a portfolio, the easiest way to start is with a 3-point lighting. You get the rim light, the key light, the field light, you know. The key will be your main, the rim light will just highlight your silhouette, and then the field will just like fill those like darks that are like too dark. And I can just show you like...
Okay, as Hyro's showing you that, we're going to take another question. We're actually going to be off, I'll explain this again, but to the side of the stage, and we can talk more about tech afterwards. You.
I was just curious, when you go from like a concept to a 3D model, how do you kind of isolate what shapes are the most important thing to kind of translate into 3D and really like make stand out in the game?
Hyro, we have 2 minutes, so maybe a quick explanation.
What shapes? So always look it up from game camera, basically, always, and see what can you see the most there. The skin, right? Like, that's the most important thing that contains the face. So I'm going to highlight a lot of the skin, and then I'm going to tone down the other materials so I can actually emphasize, hey, I can still see that he has a mouth that it could bite me or something, right? So those are the kind of like things, because on the concept, it looks amazing, just like Rob is doing, but sometimes it doesn't translate exactly to 3D, so you have to make some decisions for the sake of the game. Like, let's say I do a blockout first, send it to rigging, Corey does a quick animation, idle, we put it in the game, and the directors get together and see, oh, it's working, maybe let's change the torso and make it a little bit thicker, or let's make the face a little bit smaller, let's give him one arm more. Like, that's the things that you have a great concept, but then you have to make it work for the game, and that's the way basically we work on. And
awesome, great question. So we are out of time. That went by way faster than I than it felt. So all the artists, we're going to be hanging out in this meet and greet area over here. So if you did not get to ask your question, we'll be over here. We would love to chat with you guys. Thank you so much for being at BlizzCon. We love your support. We're really, really excited about Diablo 4. We hope you guys are as well. Thank you.
Thank you for attending Artists at Work, Diablo 4. Up next, Blizzard Art Studio, Diva.